Well, good afternoon, everybody. Can everybody up the back hear me okay? Thank you very much. Thank you. On behalf of Deputy Provost Councillor Ritchie, members and officials, a warm welcome to you all to this special meeting of Falkirk Council. First of all, could I ask if anybody, members and members of the public, have got mobile phones just to ensure that they're switched off? Thank you. For those who are unaware, we have a fire test every Thursday. This is a Tuesday. If the fire alarm goes off, please make your way over to that exit over there where you'll be taken to a safe area. Thank you for that. Could we now have the Seder, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Provost. Provost Buchanan.
Present.
Deputy Provost Ritchie. Present. Councillor Aitchison. Councillor Alexander. Present. Councillor Balfour. Present. Councillor Binney. Councillor Bissett. Councillor Black. Councillor Blackwood. Councillor Bowes. Councillor Coleman. Councillor Colley. Councillor Coombs. Councillor Flynn. Councillor Garner. Councillor Goldie. Councillor Grant. Councillor Harris. Councillor Hughes. Councillor Kerr. Councillor McHugh. Councillor McCluckie. Councillor Meiklejohn. Councillor Monroe. Councillor Murtagh. Councillor Nicholl. Councillor Nimmo. Councillor Patrick. Councillor Reid. And Councillor Spears.
Thank you. Just at this stage, I would like to say that a very warm welcome back to Councillor McHugh to the full Council. Thank you. That takes us on now to declaration of interest. And for clarity, I'll read this out. Members should declare any financial and non-financial interest they have in any item of business at the meeting, identifying the relevant agenda item and nature of the interest. Have we any declarations of interest at this time? Okay, thank you. Now, you probably know with the supplementary agenda, has everybody received the supplementary agenda in relation to the applications made? Councillor Spears is shaking his head there. Do you need a copy? Could somebody get Councillor Spears a copy of the supplementary? We'll give you a couple of minutes to read over it, Councillor Spears. Well, you will see that there's an application being made by two companies and two organisations. The first one is from the Healthy High Street Group, has been received as a deputation to be heard. I'm quite happy to move that we agree to hear them. Members agreed? Fine, thank you very much. Secondly, an application has been made from Falkirk Towns Limited Board of Directors to be received as a deputation. I'm quite happy to move that we hear them. Agreed to that? Fine, thank you very much. So what happens now is that the first group, which is the Healthy High Street Group, if those that are going to be speaking, or individuals speaking, if they'd like to come forward. Thank you. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. If you could just introduce yourself, who you are, who you're representing, and then you'll have 10 minutes. There'll be then an opportunity when you finish for members to ask any questions of your summary, okay? Okay, thank you very much.
Hello everyone. My name's Margaret Foy, and thank you for giving me the chance to speak today. I'm here on behalf of the Healthy High Street Retailer Group, which represents 65 businesses operating in the core town centre. The group is a mixture of national and independent retailers, all with staff living and working in the area. Together, we pay over £1 million in business rates, and we spend roughly £75,000 each year putting on free, educational and fun events to try and bring people into our town centre and improve their experience. We passionately want Falkirk to thrive and the town centre to be supported. This is the town where we were born and raised. Collectively, we are responsible for hundreds of staff and have relationships with thousands. In the Howgate's case, millions. Last August, I spoke at the Executive Committee meeting and highlighted that without considerable investment and regeneration, Falkirk Town Centre would perish. I urged those present to stand by their town centre first principle and put politics aside to support the future of our historic town centre, and those present voted to proceed to test the market. In the past year, we have seen further decline. More businesses have closed and more jobs have been lost. This directly affects families in your constituencies. I would like to cover 3 points today. 1, the importance of our town centre and the consequence of doing nothing, the current HQ building, and your development options. The importance of our town centre. There is a concern that this project will only help businesses in Falkirk Town Centre. The staff who work in our town centre come from all over Falkirk District. It feeds a supply chain affecting thousands of local families and also attracts visitors from many different areas. These visitors form an impression of Falkirk based on their whole experience. They support the local economy as long as we can provide adequate goods and services to meet their needs. The town centre also acts as a hub for all members of our community. We have many elderly and vulnerable people who rely on our town to access essential services and, very important, for social interaction. This is extremely important for the health and well-being of our community. Falkirk Town Centre is still a net contributor to the area's economy. It has huge untapped potential to do much more. The town centre needs your help to maximise this potential. So the consequence of doing nothing. In the last few years, the Howgate Centre alone has lost 200 jobs. That's more than a third of its workforce. It currently pays between £3 and £4 million in wages. These wages are going to local families. But 5 years ago, this figure was much, much higher. The High Street and surrounding area will have a similar picture, with a high number of retailers and service providers withdrawing from the town. Who remembers Woolworths, BHS, M&S, Watt Brothers, Matheson's, Iceland, to only name a few? All large employers attracting a high number of visitors to the town. Another example. The Howgate's footfall has dropped from 8 million visitors per year to 4.5 million. This falls further with every shop lost in the town centre. Visitor spend has dropped from £240 million in the Howgate Centre to £135 million. This is devastating to our economy. This will continue to fall if we don't start changing the mix of services away from retail and towards more sustainable uses like offices, residential and leisure. Landlords have invested heavily to attract and retain tenants. We're offering low or zero rents, paying for building works, giving capital contributions, but often for nothing, as these businesses are failing anyway. Business rates have reduced in many properties, making them more affordable, but there aren't enough retail tenants in the market which is declining faster than anyone could have predicted. Falkirk Town Centre has seen little investment in recent years, other than the THI funding, which was mainly used to improve the appearance of buildings. We have an opportunity today to rejuvenate the town centre and to provide a catalyst for positive change by making a commitment to invest. How many jobs must we lose before we realise how seriously this affects the local economy and our community across the district? So the current HQ building. Well, herein lies the opportunity. Constituents in many other district towns are asking, well, why should Falkirk Town Centre get investment over our towns? Well, the answer is that something needs to be done with the current office building, and whatever is decided will involve huge investment. A report from 2016 quoted the cost of refurbishing the current building would be circa £20 million. 5 years has passed and prices will have risen and the building deteriorated further. Really? We're going to spend £20 million fixing the current building? A hugely expensive sticking plaster on a building that is not fit for purpose and never will be. It's a shocking waste of public funding and should not even be considered. Significant costs continue to be incurred by local taxpayers across Falkirk District on account of the dilapidated state of the current municipal buildings, including its ongoing asbestos issues, shockingly high carbon footprint of 881 tonnes of CO2 emissions. It is deplorably inefficient and very costly to operate. The status quo is not an option. You have a real opportunity to consolidate your services, reduce the number of ageing properties across the district, and provide a more cost-efficient service, which surely is a much better use of taxpayers' money. Your development options. The Council decided almost 6 years ago that a new HQ was the correct option. Substantial sums have already been spent on business cases and cost options, but Falkirk Council has not been prepared to test the market for this project. Costs continue to rise, the town centre continues to decline with every delay, so please, don't allow all this work to be done for nothing. Significant opportunities exist for Falkirk Council by leveraging its buying power in the marketplace. Councils throughout the UK who have taken the lead in such placemaking opportunities are benefiting from the investment and regeneration in their town centres now. We are asking today for you to embrace this opportunity. We are not experts in the size of building required or what the composition should be. There are developers out there who have the answer to these questions. Many would be delighted to work with Falkirk Council on such a game-changing project. Falkirk Council's covenant is a major asset, and this ought to be fully explored in the search for a preferred developer partner. We realise that significant level of borrowing would be required, but councils can borrow money at very low rates. Borrowing funds to drive change, improve business efficiency, and improve economic prospects should be seen as a positive step. I'm nearly finished. The biggest opportunity here is not just from the increased footfall from the office building, it's the statement of intent by the council and the opportunity for further investment right across the Falkirk area. It's the positive step towards improving the confidence of investors and businesses, and we will see further investment in the town if Falkirk Council show leadership and do likewise. So to round up and summarise, you have staff working in a building that is not fit for purpose and requires more than £20 million spent to refurbish it. This creates an opportunity for change, efficiency and innovation. Our town centre, which is at the heart of the district, is under considerable threat and will impact jobs throughout the district. the economic performance of the wider area and pressure on services. Further delays will have a catastrophic effect on the viability of any investment project. Choosing not to approve this investment will not result in additional funding for projects in other district towns. It will not result in additional funds for other much-needed services, but it may put more pressure on these services as more people will lose their jobs. Our priority today is to achieve a result that delivers for people all across Falkirk District. We urge you once again, put your politics aside and continue to proceed to find out what the marketplace has to offer. Please, help us to drive this positive change for the future of our town and the future of Falkirk District. Thank you.
Okay, Thank you very much for your input. If you just sit there, then we'll ask members if anybody has any questions from our first. Okay, any questions?
Could I ask a question, Paul?
Yes. Councillor Reid.
As you mentioned, Margaret, the figure of hundreds of people with jobs in the High Street. Could you put a more exact number on that?
Well, Councillor Reid, as I said, a third of the workforce alone in the Howgate Centre has lost its work. That's only the Howgate. You see when you walk through the High Street the number of independents that have not been able to survive, additional services, and bear in mind that's only the shop front. What about the suppliers? What about the contractors? What about the people who feed into these businesses? It doesn't just stop on the High Street. It affects all the businesses that require these shops to be open to supply it. So we are literally talking hundreds of jobs that have been lost. Many more will follow.
Margaret, you mentioned the HQ twice there, how it enhance the town centre, and I agree with your sentiments. The 65 businesses, that's what you says, the 65 businesses. What is your feeling and their feelings on the art centre? Because you never mentioned that. Do you think that would enhance?
Obviously, the ideal situation for us is to have an arts centre and an HQ, because they both stimulate different parts of the town centre. We need footfall. We also need a twilight economy and we need an evening economy. And actually combining this would be the best possible option going forward, would be an ideal situation. But yes, we need people coming in and out of the town for different reasons other than retail to stimulate growth.
Margaret, you said there that the taxpayers and customers come from all over the Falkirk area. One of the proposals in the budgets that members are considering at the moment is for over 800,000 cut in bus subsidies, right? And obviously when you spend capital, you have revenue costs. So their proposals, if they come, would decimate the services to the outlying villages. So how's the disabled and elderly people going to walk into your shops if we've got to go and if they've not got any transport?
Provost, I think that's an unfair question to Ms Foy.
That's fine. I could also say that there is a huge...
Margaret's asking my support, and the Provost is chairing the meeting. I'm asking if she's got the support for the people out there that require buses.
Yes, people require buses, but there is various modes of transport. There's also shop mobility services that can be organised to go down different district towns to bring people in. I don't think people quite understand the importance of this town centre to the elderly community. We have people who come in here not for shopping, but to meet people, because loneliness is a huge, huge problem in our area. And these elderly people need somewhere to go. They can't shop online. They're not going to go in spending their pension. They need to have somewhere that is safe, that is policed well, that there is security available, that is safe, clean and friendly, but they are looking for a central hub to come in, to meet people, to interact, to go to the pharmacy, to get their pension, to go to the post office. We can't control bus services, but there are other ways to do this. Yes, the majority of our customers do come by car, but as I said, there is other facilities and ways that we could look at. There is shop mobility, there is different organisations that I'm quite sure would address that as out with our control.
Yeah, you did mention, sorry, the number of retailers that have left the town centre, and you've portrayed very clearly what the situation is and the problems that the retailers face, and I'm quite sure we here all understand that. What percentage of the closures in the town centre would be caused because a national company decided they didn't have enough retail footage in the shop? Decisions taken away from Falkirk, not necessarily on the shop's takings or the performance of that particular store, but what percentage of the stores that have closed have been done because of a national closure?
Councillor Goldie, I don't have a percentage figure to give you, but let me reassure you, if you have footfall increasing and spend increasing, a shop will not close its doors. Yes, some of them are national businesses that have to consolidate their efforts. Many of them are closing because of the drop in footfall and spend. I'm quite sure if this had moved forward back in 2014 and the HQ was built, Marks and Spencers would not have left our high street.
Just on that point, so with that saying, what, brothers?
Councillor Nicholl, question. Thank you.
Thank you. It will be a question. Margaret, as you know, the papers and the prices put in these papers are linked to replacement buildings on this site and not in what we would call the traditional town centre, which I've always shared the view that that is where things should happen. So it is on this site. And what would the reaction be of the group you represent if, after going through all this, and I've got to say I would think it would be very inevitable that this was the site that was chosen? Because to my mind, you would be no better off than what you are just now, and that is why you will hear some of the reasons later on when we bring forward an amendment. That on top of that, if it comes back to this site, Margaret, as your group knows, you're talking 3 to 4 years before this would be built. And in that time, 3 to 4 years, none of us have a crystal ball, but I would suggest there has been time wasted previously because of the failure to move ahead with the project under the last administration. So my concern would be, in another 3 to 4 years, the situation that you've so aptly described today would be even worse. So hence, you'll hear shortly proposals from my group as to what we think should be happening.
Yes, Councillor Nicholl, I am fully aware that the business case put out is based on a benchmark. They have to obviously benchmark the figures on something. Our group, certainly our focus is the traditional high street, which is the high street. We know, and I know Councillor Coombs questioned this at the last meeting, that the current site that we have should already be making an impact on the town. It doesn't. The staff come in, they drive in the car park, most of them either eat on site, they might nip to Asda. They do not come up onto the high street. If they did, we might not be in quite as bad a situation. We absolutely need the development to be taking part in the traditional town centre, as in the high street, and we need this urgency. We really can't wait another 3-4 years. It has to happen now.
Thanks very much, Polly. Margaret, you mentioned that you represent 65 businesses within the Falkirk Council area. How many of these businesses operate websites and sell online?
As I said, we represent a mixture of national and independents. So obviously the national businesses will have that, but don't forget there is a massive opportunity with click and collect. There is other things in the interim that can help with that, with parking within the town centre to drive more people in for their click and collect purchases. But many of the independents don't even know how to run a Facebook page. There's many businesses on the off-high street areas that I've worked with that do not have websites. They are lone workers. They feel incredibly isolated. They need people to drive up to their high street, be able to go in and get their purchases. We have so many barriers to our town centre right now. Yes, we need this development, but there's many barriers that could be removed. But it is only mainly the national businesses who are falling constantly that are offering an online purchasing service, if that answers your query.
Margaret, just a quick question. Can you tell me how much of the footfall on the high street has been lost to the retail park?
I don't have up-to-date figures, but certainly they're currently taking about 3 times as many as we are in the Howgate. So their estimate is between 15 and 20 million to the retail park. We're currently 4.5 million. The retail park was the catalyst for changing the high street. That decision destroyed us.
Okay, no other questions for Margaret? Okay then, just like to thank you very much. I thought you did very, very well.
Provost.
Who?
Provost.
Oh, yourself. Sorry, I didn't see your light.
Yeah, sorry. Margaret, the implications of particularly the Howgate, because that's what you know best. By the way, there's about 1,000 jobs within the main core of the High Street area that's affected, but I'm particularly thinking of the Howgate because you've got about 300 people in the Howgate.
Yeah. Yeah.
The implications of this not happening for your staff and the people that are working within the Howgate, what is that? And a time scale. I mean, I know that this is quite critical for you.
It is quite critical, and to be quite honest, we're hanging by a thread. We thought this decision would be made quite some time ago. The landlord has had to do deals that in a normal marketplace you would never do, only to keep the lights on and keep the shops going. They are hanging on for a decision by this council to show commitment and investment in the town. If you do not commit, they will not commit. And I really feel for all those jobs that we're talking about going forward. We really are at that it's now or never.
Okay, then, any other questions, or we can let Margaret go back to her seat. I'll call the next group forward. Okay, thank you very much. You did very well there and answered the questions very well. It's a difficult opportunity for you.
Provost, I wondered if I could interject at this moment and just ask if there's a representative here from Bowness Community Council, Madeline Hunt. I wonder if she could, if Council would agree to give her an opportunity to speak.
I'll pass it on to Mr. Moody, legal, in relation to this application.
Yes, thank you very much, Provost. I can confirm that there was contact on behalf of the Bowness Community Council this morning, and that was received by way of email. The deadline for the application, and according to the standing orders, was Friday at noon. So accordingly, it's late in relation to the requirement of the standing orders, and in order to allow the deputation to be received, Council would need to be prepared to agree to suspend that particular standing order. So that would need to be moved by somebody before we could get to that stage.
Provost, I would move that we suspend standing orders.
I will second.
Any disagreement? So that's agreed then. Okay, thank you very much. I think it's fair. The next deputation that we bring them forward will be made from Falkirk Towns Limited Board of Directors. If they would like to come forward. If you just introduce yourself, tell us who you're representing, and you'll have 10 minutes and then an opportunity for questions from members. Thank you.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Excellent. My name is Jamie McSween. I'm the chair of Falkirk Delivers, which is the town centre bid in Falkirk, which represents around about 600 businesses. Some of those businesses are retail, such as the Healthy High Street covers as well, but also we cover a wider spectrum in terms of business, like accountants, lawyers and so on, and also the nighttime economy. So we cover quite a big area. Time is relative. To my dog, it's all about when the next meal appears. To my son, the focus is Christmas. How many sleeps are left until Santa comes along? It's always too many. To politicians, I suspect, including those ones in this room, the horizon is on a 4-year block. What can be achieved over this term, and will that be enough to secure re-election? It used to be that we would measure the decline of Falkirk Town Centre in years. From one year to the next, there was a gradual decline as retailers moved on or ceased trading. That's no longer the case. Now the decline can be measured in months or even weeks. Empty units, limited footfall, and increasing antisocial problems filling the vacuum. Within the town, antisocial problems are increasing. So, for example, at Falkirk Trinity Church, after which this town is reputedly named, which sits proudly looking over the high street, you'll now find the occasional drug dealer, drug paraphernalia, and ambulance crews dealing with the aftermath of this. This is right in the middle of the town. Please let's delude ourselves. As the chair of Falkirk Delivers, we are trying to meet these challenges head on. but we are failing. Businesses in the town are trying to do the same, but they're failing as well. We find ourselves on a cliff edge and are perilously close to falling. All it will take is for the likes of Calendar Square or the Howgate to call it a day, and that's it. Game over. We are in free fall and there is no coming back. I'm well aware of the argument that retail has changed and the town needs to evolve with more businesses and more residential properties. And indeed, Falkirk has a rich history of trade and industry, from the cattle markets around which the town was formed to iron works and now the petrochemical industries. In fact, my own business, Logicaware, was based in Falkirk Business Hub, and we chose to locate in the town rather than elsewhere. However, it would be naive to think that business and residential are the solutions to all of our challenges. As I've already touched on, the town has increasing antisocial issues. They were most prevalent in Newmarket Street, but are now spreading about a bit. Why is this? Quite simply, it's because there's a vacuum out there, which has been caused by the decline of retail. As this worsens, antisocial problems will do the same. Businesses are not going to locate to a town where staff have to walk past drug takers, paraphernalia, to get to their offices. It's just not going to happen. Residents will not choose to live in a town where they feel threatened when they go out their front door. The Falkirk Herald recently depicted Falkirk as a ghost town. It will be much worse than that. If this meeting does not make the right decision today, then I see a situation in the not-too-distant future where retailers leave, property owners walk away, businesses and residents depart, and all that will be left is decaying buildings and a mass of antisocial issues. Who will deal with this? Well, it's you guys, Falkirk Council. Ultimately, it will be your mess to handle this through the likes of repossession orders, demolitions, and having to clean up and deal with the antisocial behaviour. Prevention is much cheaper than a cure. If you think the proposals in front of you today cannot be afforded, wait until you see the costs of dealing with these issues down the road. One of the arguments I've heard is that we cannot afford a new HQ and Arts Centre with the need to make significant budget cuts. Well, now, leaving aside the fact that you can't afford to do this investment now because it will cost much more in the future, I'm afraid this just does not add up. First, there's a fundamental difference between capital and operating costs. Moreover, with the current expenditure on rent and maintenance, there's a clear spend to save programme to be delivered. But most importantly, and I really want to stress this point, you do not know how much a new arts centre and HQ will cost. Until you go to the market, that is the reality. You do not know what model can be used. It could be, for example, that you don't even need to borrow a penny to own the property. And the longer you delay going to the market, the more developers look at Falkirk Council and think, why should they invest their time and money putting together proposals where the actions of this chamber are hardly confidence-inspiring? As Margaret covered, Falkirk is the heart of the district and it creates jobs. And in fact, a recent report by an organisation called CACI has highlighted that the population around Falkirk is growing and also becoming more affluent, in part. We need to target how this can be spent locally and develop a cohesive strategy around this. I've deliberately not spoken about the time that the new Arts Centre and HQ have been under discussion by this chamber, because the past is the past and we cannot change it, so there's no point dwelling on it. But I challenge all elected members here today to do the same. A few weeks ago, thanks to the support of this chamber, a wrong of the past was corrected and the Falkirk War Memorial was rededicated with the addition of the names of those in this area who made the ultimate sacrifice so that we can enjoy the freedom and democracies that we know today. It is to be commended that past generations are honoured in this way. Please unite today to look to future generations and ensure there is a town centre left for them to inherit. I cannot overstate the need to make a positive decision today, not tomorrow or next week or next month. Today, we are all watching what happens next and we will hold members to account. I have challenged you to unite. I also challenge you to focus and provide solutions. It is all too easy to sit back and say, that will not work. So what will? Your constituents expect this. We have asked around 100 of our businesses what they think about the location of the new arts centre and HQ. And every single one of them said that it should be within the town. And by that, I mean the town proper, not down here. So I leave you with a quote from Benjamin Franklin, who once said, "Never leave till tomorrow which you can do today. Today is that day."
Thank you, sir. I'd just like to make a comment before I bring it open to members that the first 2 or 3 minutes when you depicted Falkirk as an area of antisocial behaviour and drug dealing, maybe you were overemphasising that, but the fact is that was your first 2 or 3 minute take, and actually it shocked me when you were saying that the situation was that bad.
Well, it's a fact that I'm church officer at Falkirk Trinity Church once every 5 weeks. And when I am church officer, I will often find needles in the ground of the church, and the church has had overdoses in the ground. So these are facts. I agree, it's a trend which is getting worse. It's not, a massive issue just now, but it's there filling a vacuum. And if we don't do something now, that vacuum will get bigger, and I believe that the antisocial issues will get more and more prevalent and fill that.
Okay, we're opening it for questions now. Any questions? Councillor Grant.
Thanks, Paul. Jamie, I also thought you were awfully heavy-handed with the antisocial behaviour, but I didn't. At first, I was confused why this was actually coming into this, what we're here for today. So I have to kind of ask the question there why you were so heavy-handed on antisocial behaviour, because it's everywhere. It's nothing about an arts centre or a new head office. So I was confused, utterly confused with that as well.
Would you like me to clarify that, or? Well,
you started off in the first 3 minutes about how bad Falkirk is to stay in with the drug dealers, etc., etc., etc. So I was waiting for why we're here. About the HQ, about the art centre. Didn't need a partly political broadcast how bad Falkirk was. So I was confused, that's all. I was just confused on it. I just thought I'd like to say that bit. Also, I'd like to ask you, you said you asked constituents about the HQ and the art centre, and everyone is for it.
Yeah, members of Falkirk.
Can I ask you where these constituents are from?
The constituents are from all over the district, so we asked 100 of the businesses who are in the town centre. So the staff that work in those businesses will work across the district and maybe even out with the district as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Blackwood.
Yeah, just a quick question again. How do you see the siting of the new headquarters in the town centre solving this antisocial behaviour you talked about?
I think it'll do that because it will create footfall. And ultimately, the reason for a lot of the antisocial behaviour just now is that there's big empty spaces and there's people who are there who can congregate and get up to things that you prefer them not to be doing. The town, if you go back when it was busy, these issues were not there. And certainly were less visible and less prevalent than they are now. So we as Falkirk Delivers have seen a big uplift. I'm not saying it's a massive issue just now, so let's be clear on that one. I'm not saying that Falkirk is in wreck and ruin because of this. But the point I'm trying to make is that if we do not do something to arrest the decline, which the HQ and Arts Centre will do, then that is very much the path that I see it going down.
Thank you. Will be a question for us. But first of all, I've got to say that just a reminder to you, and I dare say you have consulted the business community, that to local members they get a very different response. For every one email that I've had supportive of the proposals being put forward today, I've probably had at least 12 or 15 from constituents very much against it and really wondering as to the sanity of the council in moving forward with this proposal. So But I am somebody who has long standing is known for wanting to see a regenerated town centre, because as Margaret Foy, and she did a very good case of putting forward the proposals, that a regenerated town centre, I do accept, has benefits from throughout the district. There was many times where I could have really taken issue with what things that you have said, but however, I'll move on to the question which I asked Margaret. You know as well as I do that at the end of the day, this is going to be the site of the proposed, and you have to explain to me that how that would benefit the retailers in the town centre, because I don't think it does, and when that's explained to retailers, they don't think it does either. But this is as sure as the sun will come up tomorrow morning, it will come back to this site. So take this opportunity to try and convince me that it will make a jot of difference other than the proposals that will be coming forward from my group leader later.
I think it's, you know, in any business that you ask in the town centre is very clear that they get no footfall and no trade from this site, if you like. So, you know, from the people who come and work here. There will be some, don't get me wrong, I'm sure that the occasional person will go up the town, but the reality is you know, when you talk to businesses out there, there's a clear view of the HQ needs to be in the heart of the town. By the heart of the town, you know, traditionally people focus on the high street. I know that there's different sites being looked at. This site does nothing for the town. We could be all the way down Camlin Road for all the difference that this site makes.
Yeah. Just when we talk about problems with the town centre, and there are a great many problems that we have to discuss, and mainly the problems faced by business people in the town centre. And I'm certainly not going to claim here to be a good Christian. I never take the moral high ground in that situation, but I must say, by the way, David, I've put more times in here than anybody else in the chamber. But I think your comment regards people who are on the downward spiral in that town centre was quite uncalled for and quite unnecessary, and maybe after you leave the chamber you may like to give some thought to that. I think no matter if
Councillor Goldie, a question, no rebuking, a question. Thank you.
Promise.
Thank you. Okay then, have we no more questions for Councillor Bissett? Thank you.
I wonder if you could perhaps tell me what Falkirk Council currently puts into Falkirk Town Centre.
I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, I'm afraid, so
Right,
I wouldn't like to give you...
I'll maybe enlighten you a wee bit. Falkirk Council currently puts in the Christmas lights at a cost of £150,000 that brings in hundreds of people to the town centre.
Sorry, Councillor Bissett, at this time it's questions. You can use that in the debate that's following up. But the fact is you asked a question then you're answering your own question. So it's a direct question to the gentleman in relation to the summary that he's just did.
All right.
You'll have an opportunity later.
Okay then, can I ask you, are you aware that nobody said that the HQ and Art Centre would be built up in the town centre? And what was suggested was that a circle would be drawn around the town centre, and this building is actually in the town centre. So until anything went out to procurement, nobody knows where any art centre or HQ would go. Are you aware of that?
I'm fully aware of that, and I'm aware that this is very much the start of the process. But what I would urge this chamber to do is to make a start, because until you go to the market and find out what the options are, then, to be honest, it's difficult for most of the public to understand what you're arguing about. Councillor Nicholl, you mentioned that you get lots of emails saying that they're against the HQ. And I know there's lots of press out there that says it will cost anything from 75 million to 20 million and every number and connotation in between. The reality is that nobody knows until you get to the market and ask. So, you know, rather than discussing the point to death, the view, I think, of the business community is get out there and ask, and you might be pleasantly surprised by the answer. You might not, in which case then one has to deal with it from there. But to do nothing is very much the worst case scenario.
Okay then, thank you. If there's no other questions, we'll let the gentleman go back to his seat. Any other questions? Okay, sir, thank you very much. And I know it's a difficult job speaking in front of the council. It's also quite arduous to answer the questions coming forward. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Madeleine Hunt from Bonet, actually. I was at a meeting with Bonet yesterday and I was asked to try and come along today to represent Bonet's networking group. I didn't apply as send my application to speak today as Bonet's Community Council because I didn't have their permission and I wouldn't do that. So I'm here in Bonet, as said in my letter to Brian Perry. Of course, I got a knockback this morning and I didn't realise I would be speaking today. So I'll just speak from my heart. Falkirk councillors were made up of 4 different districts in the bag, and the badge there. It's not about just Falkirk. We must remember about the other towns and villages from the east to the west that are experiencing cuts and threats of cuts. In fact, Bowness is at the minute facing 4 or 5 buildings closing. Now, in our community, we're not going to take kindly to 50 million or thereabouts because it's not been factored into the equation the cost of land or the cost of buying land or leasing land, parking, where are people going to park? You can hardly get parked there now. So there's all sorts of things that need to be, and I'm not against it. The shoppers, and I feel for them, and I'm not against a new headquarters, but this is the proper place to build it because you own the site, and also in the last plan you had in, it was coming in at 24 million for both the Arts Centre and the HQ, and there was land available here to sell to recompense that. Now, nobody has mentioned yet that this £50 million isn't coming. It's not coming out of. It's coming out of the capital funding, but nobody's mentioned that it has to be paid back. You just don't get that 50 million and then bye-bye. That's out of the council's savings, if you like, and that'll have to be paid back maybe 3 million a year over I don't know how many years, maybe 4 million, and that will experience more cuts to their already budget on the paying back of this, and nobody's taken that into the equation. And I think that's very important. Also, see, I didn't. I didn't think I was speaking. But Bowness is 2 shops have recently closed in Bowness due to the Falkirk Council putting up the rents, and more are closing every day. I'm very sorry, but you know I can't see that when it comes to elections that it's not going to go down very well if you spend 50 million in Falkirk Town Centre when other places are having to shut services. And our recreation centre is threatened with closure, and the Mariner Centre's had 3 upgrades. In the 40 years, we've just had a wee tweak to the changing rooms. The money is more money gets spent in Falkirk than gets spent in any other area. And we have to consider the little villages and the towns that are threatened with cuts. And I did ask for a meeting with some members and the leader of the trust, but I got knocked back to January, so Bowness has not got a voice to the input of all these things that are happening. So that's really, and the Facebook's awash with moans and groans and complaints about this money being spent only in Falkirk. It's very hard to judge and say, oh, that's good. Nobody wants to see their local areas and communities getting torn apart and Falkirk getting another big handout. That's really about all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Have you just seated? And members, any questions?
I hope not.
Councillor Bissett.
Thanks for your contribution, Madeleine, at short notice. I'd just like to ask, do you have any concerns, or what would the impact be on the people of Bowness if the town hall had to close, and have you any concerns over community asset transfers?
Well, that's not. I've always had concerns of community asset transfers because putting the onus onto people and shoving buildings that in some cases aren't fit for purpose and leaving members of the public to have to take up and find the funding to keep these places going. And people that have done it locally aren't always happy. But if the building's up to scratch and it's got potential to bring in money, it can be a good idea, and it takes some of the pressure off the council. But parking, maybe not charging for parking in Falkirk district might have a better impact in the town centre.
Okay, thank you. We've got Councillor Coombs, Councillor Hughes, then Councillor Grant. And remember, the quick, if some of you could maybe put your lights on, we've got your names. We'll go Councillor Coombs first. Remember, it's direct questions in relation to the item that's on the agenda, and obviously it can widen out. Thank you very much.
This is a very, very quick question. Excuse my lack of... I just wondered how many businesses Bonet represented. I don't know anything about Bonet. I know of them, but I don't know anything about it. That was all.
We represent business and charities, and over 60.
60?
Yeah, we do businesses. We work with the bus, the community bus, the football park, the recreation centre, and I'm always talking to the independent traders in the town, and we represent a lot of charities, churches, and.
Thank you, Provost. Today we're going to be discussing a civic and arts centre. Can I ask you, has the Hippodrome been an asset to Bowness?
Yes, the Hippodrome has been a great asset to Bowness, although I personally wasn't in favour of the revamp that was supposed to be taking place, because I didn't think that they should be outlaying money and getting surveyors in and plans drawing up for something that hadn't been consulted on. And that worried me. There's a lot of things going on within areas of the council where things are money's being spent and then that's not being progressed, like your own other town centre plan. You know, that there was £1 million spent in getting all that ready. Might be well worth going back to that, seeing you've spent that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Grant.
Madeline, can I ask you, you says there you tried to get a meeting with the trust, yes, and you get put back to January, did you say?
Yeah.
May I ask you what the meeting was for and what was the explanation they gave for a January meeting, if you don't mind? Thank you.
The meeting was for to meet the trust and the CEO and our local representatives and members of the public and the community council to discuss all the closures that were coming. Bowness's 6, I think, threatened closures. Our library, which we've got money to revamp, is still under threat of closure. And I've worked very hard to get money for the library out of funding from the central Edinburgh government.
Okay, thank you. Now listen, it's been a wee bit, I know it's a difficult one, but it's really direct questions in relation to the item that's on the agenda and how communities like Madeline's and Bowness, how they would feel affected by what's before us just now. So, Councillor Alexander.
Yes, Convener, Madeline, a double-barrel question, if you like. First is, you've heard from the representatives of Falkirk Town Centre, the commercial concerns that are there. You've heard as well that there's 1,000 jobs within the Falkirk High Street area. Can you tell me, what you've heard today from these representatives, does it concern you? And also you said that the Falkirk has received the bulk of the funding for projects. Can you tell me what these projects were?
Sorry, who received the bulk of the funding?
You said that Falkirk receives the bulk of Falkirk Council funding for major projects.
No, I didn't say that. I said there's more money spent in Falkirk than anywhere else.
Yeah. Can you tell me just exactly where
Well,
these projects are?
the Mariner Centre's had 3 upgrades in as many years nearly. And Bowness Recreation Centre hasn't had anything for 40 years and it's threatened with closure. Yeah, but it's still, they're answerable to this body here, this house. They're answerable to the councillors, or they should be.
Okay, thank you. I think we're getting away from the point again. I think it's unfair really to this young lady, because as she said initially that she had no notes taken because she didn't know she was going to be allowed to speak. And that's how it'd be better if it was direct questions relating to how she feels and her group feels about what this effect would have on her own area. And I think that's the message coming across. She thinks it would be unfair, there's too much money being spent in Falkirk, blah, blah, blah. So we could maybe make just sort of direct questions, because it is difficult. Councillor Binney, thank you. Direct question.
It's nice to hear your concerns today, and I do understand that all areas in the Falkirk district, they're all suffering a little bit. But I'd like to ask you a direct question. Can you tell me what you think about Falkirk High Street at the moment and the people visiting that? Do you have any thoughts on that? Because that's what we are discussing today, the UHQ and Falkirk High Street, and also U Arts Centre. So I would really welcome your input to that, if you don't mind.
I feel I'm all for a new HQ, but I don't think the council are in a position, with cuts as they are, to be borrowing money that's going to have to be paid back, and having to buy land for parking and buy land to build the premises. And if they can't get land, they'll have to rent land. So not only are they taking on that, but they're taking on other burdens as well. Whereas if the HQ was here, they wouldn't have any of those other things. Now, I'm sorry for every town centre. I'm sorry for our own little town centre in Bowness. And I'm even very sorry for Grangemouth. If you walk through there, Grangemouth, it's like a ghost town. And, well, big shops come in and destroy town centres as well. But Marks and Spencer's was a nail in the coffin for Falkirk Town Centre, as far as I'm concerned. Because they'll have more pull than ever any council building or arts centre will ever have. And how do we replace that?
Okay, that's fine. A direct question for Councillor Burnett, and it was a direct answer. Any other questions before we let this lady go back to her seat? Okay then. Thank you very much. We appreciate that it was difficult for you. You had an opportunity to research, but I think you did very well, and your answers as well. Thank you very much. That takes us to item 3 on your agenda, pages 2 to 22. It's the referral from the Executive, Council HQ Arts Centre, and it's the report is by Mrs Geisler. Thank you, Mrs Geisler.
Thank you, Provost. This report today considers the replacement of the HQ, the Council HQ and the Arts Centre, as has already been mentioned today, and outlines the next steps in order to take this project forward. As we've heard today, there's been a long-standing commitment to this project, and that's most recently been augmented by the recognised need to support the regeneration and transformation of Falkirk Town Centre. And together with the inclusion of the provision in the Council's capital programme earlier this year of the estimated budget provision of £45 million. What I'm asking members to do today is to formalise selection of favoured options from the list contained in the report to allow more work to be done to take us to the tender stage of the project. The work being done by officers on this project is being overseen by the Council of the Future Board, and paragraph 4.1 of your report summarises the issues that have been considered by its members. Whilst paragraph 4.2 of the report endorses the approach of a 0.6 ratio desks to FTE, and that results in workstations of 700 units. And Appendix 1 of the report contains the detail associated with that. Paragraph 4.3 describes the emerging position in relation to the Central Advice Hub and our suggestion that that be incorporated into the project, whilst paragraph 4.4 outlines the work that we've been undertaking with Scottish Futures Trust on potential partnership opportunities and involvement, and that's based on the one public estate principle, which we've talked about before, and further the opportunity that SFT have identified for external funding coming from them to support exploring a zero carbon impact facility. In respect of the Arts Centre, Falkirk Community Trust commissioned an organisation called DCA to consider an appropriate specification for this facility, and there's detail on that contained in paragraph 4.5 of the report, whilst their conclusions are summarised beyond that to paragraph 4.8. Following on from receiving the report from DCA, an exercise was undertaken by officers to consider how spaces might more efficiently be used between the two facilities by means of co-location, and that work is being presented to members today. There is a recognition that to co-locate these two facilities will require careful design, but there has been examination of other similar facilities up and down the country, and we're very confident that we can produce something that retains the integrity of both opportunities. Whilst paragraph 4 of 11 of the report makes reference to issues associated with parking. This led to further work, which was described in paragraph 4.12, which relates to marrying this new specification with the budget provision, which I've mentioned already. And that's resulted in the option appraisal, which I've mentioned, and that's summarised in table 1 on page 10 of your agenda. There's more detail on these options 1 to 5, contained in appendix 3 to the report. Pursuing either of these options will allow disposal of significant assets that the Council currently owns, but I have to emphasise that both would include the fit-out and use of the vacant space in the Falkirk Stadium, if this project is approved moving forward. For reasons described later in the report, paragraphs 417 to 422, our recommendation is that options 4 and 5 give the most favourable outcome to the brief, and that taking these forward is reflected in the recommendations contained earlier on in the report. Should members support the recommendations, more work will need to be done in developing the final specification and coming forward with one of those two options, as well as elements of the procurement package, which are described in paragraph 423. And these would include firm criteria in relation to other wider economic benefits that the joint HQ Arts Centre would bring, and that we've already touched on that quite a lot this afternoon. And also, we would be seeking proposals for potential operating models in relation to the new facility. I have to mention at the report there is reference in paragraph 424 to a report coming back to members in December. Given this meeting today, that report will now come back to the Executive in January. The implications, Provost, are contained in the following paragraphs, and so I would refer members to the recommendations contained in paragraph 2 of the report to note the progress of works that we've previously undertaken, to note the outcome of the option appraisal that I've referred to in table 1, page 10, and to approve moving forward with options 4 and 5. To note a further report once we've done the work that I described would come to the Executive. As I say, this would now be in January rather than December, and to agree to take up the offer that I've mentioned in relation to Scottish Futures Trust offer in association with developing the potential for a zero carbon facility in this location. Thank you, Provost.
Okay, I'm going to bring in the Chief Executive just now before I go to the Leader of the Council. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Provost. I wanted just to say a few words about this report in front of you today, and the very strong need, as I see it, to move forward. And I think there's a number of elements to this. Most obviously is the need for action in relation to this building and indeed the Town Hall because of their condition and their very limited future use. And this has come before the Council before my time, but I'm aware of some of that background. But really this is, not a suitable facility for a modern council, and so we need to think about, how we are going to re-provision that. I suppose the second issue for me is the issue of addressing serious decline in Falkirk Town Centre, and that's what was cited in the report that came to the executive last year, in August last year. And we've heard arguments today, strong arguments for action. I think that poses some challenging questions for us in terms of the pace and the ambition of our response in terms of both the HQ and the Arts Centre. And in that context, we know that investment in the town centre is an investment in the broader economy, it's an investment in jobs, both protecting existing employment and also encouraging new employment. And perhaps as much as anything else, it's about creating confidence in the town centre and creating that atmosphere where further investment will be able to come forward from other bodies. We've got a significant challenge, obviously, in terms of finding the best solution in terms of affordability and impact. And all the work that has been carried out to date and the future work proposed is designed to flush that out. We know that an innovative town centre project may enable us to access investment zone funds or other sources of funding. The procurement process may also produce options we cannot predict in terms of partnership opportunities, operating models, and funding solutions. So I think in that regard, we need to be open to a range of possibilities that might emerge from that process. I suppose the final point to emphasise is that you are not taking any final decisions today. It's only at the end of the procurement process that the Council will know what options are available to it and what the financial implications of these various options are. And it's at that stage that the Council would be requested to take a final decision. I think it's important that that's something that's borne in mind in the context of today's report. Thank you, Provost.
Okay, thank you. Executive. I'm going to go now to Councillor Michael John, Leader of the Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. It's disappointing that we've delayed the work and the progress of the procurement of a new HQ and Arts Centre, and not for the first time. And I suspect that we're going to get into a debate today, which I believe is premature, and I fear will be predicated on the work that's still to be done as part of the procurement process. However, I do have a number of questions that I would like to ask officers, Provost, and I'll ask you if you could bear with me. We spoke earlier and we heard from the folks who work daily in the town centre. But could officers maybe tell me what is the number of jobs directly in the town centre and those that are just maybe on the periphery of our town centre that would be closely associated with the town centre? If you've got that information.
Happy to say, Provost, the information we have is that in Falkirk Town Centre itself, there's around 975 people employed. These are 2018 figures. Around Grahamston, which is the central retail part, there's 1260 jobs. And in Camlin, which is ancillary to the town centre, around 455 jobs. In total, around 5,000 jobs in retail in the Falkirk area.
Okay, thank you for that, Douglas. You might want to just hang around. You don't need to jump up and down. But do we know or have an estimate of how many jobs have been lost within the last few years? I know that may well be very subjective at this time because it's very fluid, but just would you have an idea of what the difference is?
We're aware the Scottish Retail Consortium do regular updates on this and estimate about a fall of about a quarter in retail jobs in our area between 2008 and 2015. So there has been ongoing job losses. Clearly the job losses associated with announcements since then have been important, and we've heard some of them today.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. What is the economic impact of the increasing numbers of empty properties in our town centre, Douglas?
Economic impact is clearly in the reduction in footfall for the shops in the town centre, any loss of jobs as I've described, and a concern over the investment prospect
for the town centre, clearly arising, situations where you have substantial voids arising, then you have the concern that as to the prospects for attracting any further investment to replenish that stock.
And would that not then actually have an impact even on us as a local authority and the income that we get, and that then there's a knock-on effect right across the board?
There is an effect in terms of rates income, although the empty rates provisions demand that landlords continue to meet their rates obligations. Those monies are paid to the local authority, passed on to government, and then reimbursed back to councils on a formula that's agreed. There is always a consequence, though, arising from vacant buildings where with a knock-on effect for property. The council itself doesn't have a lot of property in the town centre, so we don't have a lot of void properties that are an obligation for ourselves. But clearly it is a concern when you have substantial numbers of vacancies in the town centre, and that has been evident in Falkirk.
Thank you. Do we have any indication of what the current spend from the current building here, this location is, and what the comparison might be of location directly within the town centre?
We've done some work on this, and I should say that this is work that has been taking place associated with the preparation for the procurement exercise. So we have a matrix to assess the economic impact of the investment that's proposed, and in advance of finalising that, we've done some work just to understand what the effect of existing spend is in the town centre and what that might change with as a consequence of the new investment. So currently we estimate around 2 million a year is spent by users of this site. So that wouldn't just be the staff in the building, but also visitors to the town hall, etc. And that's around 2 million is spent within the town centre area. And the model that we've worked to is estimating that could double as a consequence of the investment. So we could see around 4 million if the project was on or close to the high street. Now, these are advanced figures, and we are working with the economists just to finalise this model, but that's the initial findings that they've given us.
So within that, should there only be a single build of office accommodation, whether it be this site or otherwise at this stage, and I'll come to that a bit later on, if there's no arts centre and if there's no replacement arts centre, there is likely to be a fall in what we currently generate by way of income to the town centre before we even actually look at a new facility.
Absolutely. I mean, the figures I've given are based on benchmarked consideration of projects elsewhere, so amounts of spend by office workers in lunch and other expenditure, and in arts facilities and associated expenditure. And so that would need to be honed in the course of doing this work. But if any component of the scheme were not to go ahead, if the Arts Centre wasn't to go ahead, or if it's elected not to proceed with the offices, or if offices were proceeding by a different model, say dispersal around the area, then that would have a knock-on effect for the town centre. What we're hoping to do is that as this model is refined, we can have more solid understanding of that position and choice that could be made.
A project, particularly a new build project directly in our town centre, just that project alone, would that stimulate the economy locally? Just talking about the build project?
So certainly the construction project in itself will have an effect for the town centre, and we estimate there could be 330 to 360 jobs associated with the construction phase. So that these are done in person-year equivalents, apparently, so that does have an immediate impact. And obviously the expenditure from those construction jobs does have a downstream benefit. I think also to respect the fact that that investment is expected to resolve investment questions for other interests in the town centre. That's causing uncertainty just now. Our lack of a decision at this point in how the project should move forward is causing concerns for others who are poised to determine what they do, potentially to invest, potentially to bring on other developments associated with our own investment. So that's causing uncertainty, and these would bring about additional construction jobs and potentially additional footfall, additional visitor expenditure for the town centre. So the numbers I'm giving here are initial, and it's based on the initial setup of the matrix, the economic matrix that we have. We would be refining this for the purpose of bringing it back to the council. I think importantly, when we have the means of assessing any submissions coming from developers, that would take into account not just the economic impact of the HQ and Arts Centre itself, but any ancillary investment that was coming forward.
Okay, thank you. Both the UK and the Scottish Government are promoting use of culture, heritage and the arts and regenerating our town centres as a way of significantly contributing to our economic activity. Are there examples elsewhere in the country where that has been effective?
Again, we've done some initial review of that work. DCA, who did the work on the Arts Centre, have pointed to examples in other places that they've worked on or experience that they have picked up from elsewhere. And therefore places like Bristol, Chichester, Bexhill, the Shakespeare Theatre North in Merseyside, in Birmingham and in Eastbourne all show additional gross value added productivity for their city or town centres, and additional jobs, and in many instances it's well over 100 jobs associated with that investment. I think there is evidence, and it's been shown nationally and even some international examples, where culture can be a lead, can give a lead for regeneration. It brings about investment, new activity, new ancillary businesses, and adds to the overall creative industries and components of an economy. It helps to boost tourism in particular, and that's clearly, given the experience we have, that's a sector that we want to enhance locally. So certainly we do see real benefits from that cultural-led regeneration.
Thank you, and this is probably going to be my last question, I think. Are there other local authorities that have carried out asset realisation and used the town centre first principle when looking at their office accommodation?
There's several examples up and down the country, again, down south and up here. We did gain some, we've done a trawl of other councils and some of the information they have. We did get a response from Aberdeenshire Council, who have adopted a strategy to co-locate their staff, and they've focused on 3 centres in Stonehaven, Ellon and Inverurie, and they've been co-locating their staff in new office ventures, and have shown that these have brought about real improvements for these town centres, particularly the highlighted Inverurie as an example. We've also seen, and we've been to visit, the example of Dumbarton, who've established, West Dumbartonshire Council established a new headquarters for 500 staff, and that has brought about a number of regeneration projects within their town centre, and they insist that there is much more poised to come forward.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. I was just going to add something to that. Just to follow on from what the Chief Executive was saying, is that All we're asking members to do today is to crystallise on a couple of options for taking things forward. And although what we're saying to you today is not necessarily very high level, what we would do is work up all that detail and bring that all back to you, to the Executive in January. And that would allow you to examine some of the things we're saying to you today in a lot more detail and give yourself comfort around some of the firming up some of these issues, around particularly the economic benefits of the project. So we're not asking members to sign off on this today with these high-level figures. We will come back to members in January with a lot more detail round about that.
Thank you, Mrs Geisler, for that, because you've articulated what I was trying to demonstrate is there's a lot of information out there, there's a lot of good examples. We're not doing something that is new, we're not doing something that is out of kilter with what others are doing, you're absolutely right. We're not being asked to take a final decision today, but we're just being asked to move to the next phase of the process. And it's only when we've gone through the procurement process and seen what the market has to offer can members be asked to make a decision around cost and site. And we are not at that stage at this moment in time. It is unfortunate, though, that people have conflated the process and focusing on this current site. It has only been used as a benchmark and to give us an idea of what a cost might be. But it is purely for planning purposes, and there are many other factors that need to be taken into account in designing a new build package, and that takes time to do. And the stage we're at, we're unlikely to have all the answers. And that is why we need to look at going to the next stage to get some of those answers. But I think, for me, I think that there's a red herring this site. This site is not going to deliver the regeneration that this town centre needs. And I hope to be in a position that when we get to the next stage of the process to take this site off the table. It is disappointing that there has been other members within the council that have been banding around figures that have no evidence base behind them, and it's just scaremongering, giving figures of around 70 and 80 million. That is not helpful to the process, and I'm disappointed that others haven't had the understanding of this process and more experienced members within this particular authority. We've already committed the capital receipts from the Gateway to the Town Centre project, and then there's this existing site. There's other properties within the SPR and contributions from the investment zone package.
18.2, Provost.
I didn't mention anyone.
To me that you did. I apologise.
I never indicated to any other member.
Right, I apologise.
No. So it goes to show that until we have the information about the site, the costs, and then start to build up a package and a financial package to be able to deliver all of this, we don't have all the information. We're not at that stage. This isn't unusual in projects of this magnitude. Again, those that have been in this council for longer than even I should be aware of how these projects are built up and the layers that go with them. There's potential also within the new build project for a zero carbon building. There may well be Green Deal funding that will be able to assist with the package. Also the contributions to the cost of the project from other areas, and all that detail will need to be brought together when we have something a bit more robust. It's clear we must move forward, and we can't do anything. We can't afford to do nothing. And this is and should be beyond politics and political posturing. We should be united in the support for our town centre, because if it fails, the ripple effect that it will create will adversely impact on our smaller town centres, and that in turn will fail to them. People will vote with their feet. They'll go elsewhere. They'll go out with Falkirk District, and we don't want that. We want people to continue to shop in our local area. Time is, however, of the essence, as we've heard today from the various people that have spoken. We have a failing town centre, and if it is not already in crisis, it's not far away. It is right and proper that the council intervene, just as governments would be expected to do at time of financial crash and look to invest. We did it in Denny with an investment of £9 million, and it's been done in other town centres that the council has invested. It's time that Falkirk Council actually made that commitment to invest in our town centre and prevent further decline, and give the retail and business sector the confidence and the support of the development and creating jobs. If we don't, there will be further decline, more jobs lost. Jobs that are in the main low-tariff jobs, but are keeping food on the table, homes warm, families with a roof over their head. These people come from Bowness to Banknock, the Braes to Larbert, and everywhere in between. They're people who will rely on work within our town centre, and these work in every single part of our area and beyond. If we don't deliver, it's for our constituents, it will be them that will vote. They will vote with their feet. They will vote when it comes down to the elections. They will never ever forgive Falkirk Council for not supporting their town centre and the proposals and saving their jobs. It's not just about direct jobs that are in jeopardy, but the ripple effect of the other shops. You don't have people who are working in your town centre that go out for their sandwich, their juice, for their odd wee message, to pick up things here and there. The other shops will suffer as a result, and that will continue to go into decline. We've heard very eloquently from Margaret from the Howgate Shopping Centre, and that's just one example of where they have reduced from 300 down to 300 jobs from 500 within the last few years, and the visitor numbers have halved. The impact and the spending power is reduced from 340 million down to 135. That is the reality. That is just one place within our town centre. If you multiply that across to the other parts, then it starts to have a huge impact. So, by locating our arts centre and office accommodation in our town centre and using the town centre first principle, we can kick-start the strategy to revitalise the town centre, the outcome of which will secure and create more jobs, get more people living in the town centre. It will create a demand for retail and services in the town centre. The perception of our town centre as the place to be is created. Increasing visitors, business will perform better, the number of vacant units will reduce, and the local economy will grow. It reduces the retail space by diversifying from offices into culture, removes uncertainty and provides confidence for our investors, enabling the town centre developers to make decisions on investment. It supports our investment zone bid for both UK and Scottish governments. It allows the council to overcome the silos and work more effectively and with partners, and provides a one-stop public service approach. Produces a co-working hub for partners that can attract and focus public sector activity in Falkirk Town Centre. Address the donut effect of the lack of visit facilities in Falkirk Town Centre by increasing the visitor experience potential, adding to the Wheel, Calendar House, the Kelpies, etc. Enables Falkirk to be more than a day visit and enables the increase in visitor expenditure levels. Releases the sites for housing and development at Rossvale, Abbotsford municipal buildings and provides a capital receipt. Enables us to move to zero carbon, halving the floor space and delivering our climate change commitments. It generates confidence in the wider Falkirk area as a location to invest and grow business. There's been much malignment of what has been referred to as my vision. It's not just my vision, but one that is shared by my administration colleagues. But at least we have one, and that is something that has been missing previously. Yes, it's ambitious, and quite rightly so, as the people of Falkirk District deserve to have a council that wants them to have a thriving, busy economic hub of a town, and that is something for those who live, work and visitors alike. Don't mind others being critical, but what I have seen is opposition for opposition's sake, with nothing constructive coming forward and no alternative. So my plea to colleagues on the other side of the chamber is to put politics to one side. Do the right thing. Think of your constituents who work in the town centre. Let's get out to the market, see what it has to offer. No more delays. Let us have much more informed discussion in order to get this proposal into something that is real and tangible for the people of Falkirk. Fact is, we can't afford not to do this. I therefore move the recommendations as in the paper, with the amendment that the paper goes to the Executive in January. as there has been a delay occurred at this moment in time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Have we got a okay. Have we got a seconder for that?
Formally second and reserve the right to return to the debate.
I've heard during one of the times that Councillor Nicholl was up, it sounded as though they were going to have an amendment, but proper protocol brings me to the leader of the opposition main group person. Have you any amendment at this stage, sir? It's just a question, yes or no?
I don't have any amendment.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, then, Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Province. I should like to say that I'm a retailer, and I really believe in the need to make links between towns and their wider community, and to ensure that retail works. Now, in Falkirk, the town centre moved 20 years ago. It moved to the retail park, as we all know, and all the big brand shops moved with it. And so did the cinema and the restaurants, and they get free parking too. Much shopping has moved online, and we can't change that, and it's gone up 600% in a very short time. And we've been asked to spend 50 million. The budget for the Arts Centre is 15. The budget for the HQ is 30, which in itself is a lot of money. But at the same meeting that we had this original report was a report telling us that we had in the next 5 years to save £76 million over the next 5 years, cutting things like flower bed, potholes, music tuition, all difficult decisions we have to make for our communities. And 3 years ago, a much more modest replacement was rejected. It was called a vanity project, and we were told that the full cost of the options had not been looked into. Now we're being asked for a much bigger project with a huge art centre which is growing almost by the day. The original figure, as I've said, was 15 million. The consultants weren't told it was 15 million, so we have proposals before us that take it from 15 to 40 million. Huge sums of money, and we have already here a headquarters and our town hall building that already operate. However, the town hall building provides some activities, but it operates at a loss, at a substantial loss. We're talking £300,000 a year, and that has been over a period of years. So we're faced with a big dilemma, aren't we? We're faced with, we already owe, as a council, 232 million, and somehow we've got to prudently look at ways in which we can help our town centres. And I think the real challenge for Falkirk Town Centre is this issue of the donut. You can't get in there. We have all these extra tourists that come to the Wheel and the Kelpies and Calendar House, but they can't find the town. You can drive all around it. My relatives from far and wide have been frustrated and gone elsewhere. And I'm afraid if we fasten our thoughts on one solution, this one building, then all these other things that really do need to happen, such as opening up the town centre for cars to come in, people to be able to be dropped off, to look into why we have 30 empty high street shops, mostly because they're big ones. What we need is for the people that own these shops to subdivide them into something more manageable, which would would help smaller business come in and utilise them. We need solutions that are going to work for everybody, because we don't know that what's being proposed is a solution. We know it's a big, shiny project which sounds wonderful, but we have no evidence at all that it's going to work. There are lots of small high streets close to us that work. Linlithgow, full. It has 18 cafes and restaurants in its high street. Stockbridge, small specialty shops. Callander, again, small specialty shops. There are towns that work, lots of them. And so...
A respect here, please. Thank you.
Sorry? So I think we're saying, on the one hand, we want this big project and we're going to send it out for 2 or 3 developers to look into what the possibilities are. I say we as a community need to have the ideas and bring together all the community to say what it is each of us can do, because we're not going to sit down and just say, well, that developer's going to do it, we don't need to do anything, carry on. It needs us all to be engaged. It needs us all to have the community plan like they do in Bowness, so the community know what it is they all have collectively to do to make their town centre work. And we're not even looking at these options. We're saying we're going to throw money at it and it'll work. Well, I'm not convinced. So I would like to put an amendment. And right. So do I actually...
Well, if you want to read the amendment out and we get seconded, then if you get copies there for everybody else, if you get copies there, then we'll get one of our officers to distribute the copies. But if you want to move it, we get seconded, and then we'll get one of our officers to distribute so everybody's got a copy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We propose that the Council look at immediate ways to help the town centre with the following amendments. To instruct officers to look at opening up the east end of the High Street to traffic to its junction to the Cam Wind. To instruct officers to bring forward proposals to relocate council staff into vacant High Street areas. To instruct officers to bring forward a spend to save project for the council headquarters, and to put the proposals for an arts centre on hold due to the huge cost and debt implication of the proposed project. Also, that all decisions relating to this are remitted to full council.
Okay, thank you. Have you got a seconder for that?
I'll second that, Provost, and reserve my right to come
Reserve
back.
the right. Okay, then we'll get, if you can give the copies to one of our officers. Thank you. I think there should be an opportunity now for a recess, because this is the first opportunity that people have got to see that. So I intend to give a recess when this is handed out for a 15-minute period. Okay, thank you very much. Okay then, everybody, thank you very much for taking the opportunity. Obviously, this is such an important issue, and we gave everybody time to look at the amendment that came forward from the Conservative group. Okay, I'm opening it up for debate again.
Provost, can I just give notice that Labour's got a further amendment?
Do you want to distribute it just now? Have you got it formulated? Okay, just to save some time here. Maybe get officers to go down and distribute it. Have we got enough copies there for everybody? Okay, thank you. So we're going to be dealing with the first one first and the First Amendment. Okay, so we're going to debate, just a general debate about everything. Are they going to ask for, an opportunity to again look at it?
I don't think so, because it's not very long.
Right. I'll give everybody a few minutes to look at it, because obviously it's fresh from everybody's perspective except the Labour group. Everybody, you'll get an opportunity that it's not a very long further amendment, but just to let us know where we are, we've got a motion moved and seconded to agree the recommendation contained within the report. We have an amendment from the Conservatives moved and seconded. You've got a copy of that. You've also heard from Councillor Bissett that there'll be a further amendment, and there'll be an opportunity later on to find out exactly what that is. So we're going to open up the debate.
Provost, would you like a response to the Conservative amendment? Okay.
Provost, is it not the case that if the mover of the motion stands up and speaks, it closes the debate?
Right.
Provost, quite clearly, in view of what
Right.
has come forward from the Labour group, and it does to some extent build in things that we were proposing, it would be sensible for, I'm afraid, to have another adjournment for colleagues to discuss this.
Provost, before we go to recess, I'm not clear from the wording of this amendment what it actually means. Which report does this refer to?
Hi, Provost. Just between now and the procurement process, and there's going to be quite a delay. That might be January but even before the specification comes back, maybe March before we get to the stage of looking at a decision. So it's to look at ways that we could, at the moment, support the town centre. Really, that's between that gap. During that gap, it's just to look at ways that we can bring forward a report back to look at immediate ways that we can support the town centre.
Is Robert suggesting that his idea is to look at some of the proposals that have come forward from Lynn earlier this afternoon, such as opening up the high street and perhaps maybe looking at and evaluating the possibility of moving staff into empty premises? Because if it is Provost rather, then obviously I'm quite sure that my members are more interested in this amendment.
Provost, I'm sure that officers will look at every aspect, and I'm sure they'll include including for the key service.
Yes, just a quick point. I was going to ask a question earlier on of Mrs. Geisler and, you know, them there, but considering just a short time ago, 2 years, there was an opportunity to enhance the footfall in the high street by moving out of Abbotsford House. You know, and I find it quite strange to spend £850,000 in Abbotsford House when they could have bought Calendar Riggs Centre for 1.1 million-ish. And considering the housing hub's already there at the moment, you know, I find it bizarre that you've changed your tune and missed an opportunity, you know, that you could have helped the High Street, in particular the East End. Thank you.
That's not even on. But I think they heard you, Billy.
Get a bit clearer to your microphone and a bit closer. Thank you. If you could answer that question, sir. Mrs. Geisler, thank you.
Thank you, Provost. The decision was made to acquire Abbotsford House. There was a report to members taken in 2017, I believe. And that fully analysed the options that were available to members at the time, and that was in the context of the Strategic Property Review. At the time of writing the report, we were tenants of Abbotsford House, and we would have continued to pay rent had we remained in situ. And so the discussion at that point before members was whether we should continue to be tenants of that in that location, or whether we should take the opportunity to purchase the premises, given that there was a significant dilapidations bill that we would have had to, that would have fallen due had we remained tenants, something in the region of, I believe, about £500,000, and a rental of, at that time, £200,000 a year. So on balance, it was cheaper to buy the facility. Turning to your point about Calendar Square, we had no detailed information at the time of the suitability of conversion of Calendar Square for office accommodation, but that would have been a significant expenditure to convert that building for office use. And given that no decision had been made at that point in relation to the future of the council's HQ, that could have been a temporary arrangement which would have been undone at a later stage. So accordingly, the view was taken that the best way forward, having regard to all of the options, was for us to acquire Abbotsford House and to remain there, albeit there was an understanding that that would not be a long-term consideration, and that the occupiers of Abbotsford House would in due course at that point be moving to the new HQ.
Thanks, Provost. Provost, there's no doubt that this council has been asked this afternoon to make a very important decision. It's got long-term implications for the people that we represent and for the finances of the council. And I think every single one of us in this chamber is concerned about Falkirk Town Centre. But we also have to be concerned about the decision. And it's being framed by some people as a simple choice between saving Falkirk Town Centre and not saving the town centre. And it does a great disservice to pretend that we face that simple choice, when in reality it's far more complex and it impacts many stakeholders, including, but not just including, the town centre businesses. And there are many unknown benefits with plenty of unquantified risks. As has been mentioned earlier, I stated at the executive that I've got concerns about how exactly the increase in footfall over and above the footfall from the current municipal buildings and town hall, how that's going to save the town centre for the long term when all town centres are seeing a reduction due to the changing ways that we shop. The other side of this is what the implications are for our revenue budget, and not just in loan repayments, but also revenue support ongoing for an arts centre. I can't remember, I think it was Councillor Munro that mentioned the public funding that goes towards running the town hall at the moment. But that's no surprise, because none of these type of facilities are expected to be self-financing, but but I think we need to be aware and reiterate that this level of debt absolutely will have an impact for the next 30 years at least, and will cut services on an ever-decreasing council budget. So, on what basis do we assume further private sector investment? Mr Duff mentioned earlier a couple of examples, and obviously I have asked for these while I've been having, let me say, interesting conversations with Douglas over my views on this project. Colston Hall in Bristol was mentioned, and yes, it does generate a lot of money and it's supporting 300 jobs, but I don't think we're comparing apples with apples here. Bristol has a population of somewhere in the region of 500,000 people, and this obviously has been a venue that's been up and running for quite some time, and we're looking at redevelopment project there over 20 years. And I think that we're conflating, as I say, not comparing like with like, and we're also looking at immediate problems with long-term resolves. The Shakespeare Theatre North, which was mentioned as well, and in the information that I've got, it says it's forecast to generate 13 million annually. Now, and again, this is my point, I would love to see this evidenced and proved. I think we need to know, and that's why we think we should go to the procurement stage, because I want to be convinced, if we're putting this level of investment into the town, that A, the results that are being given here today, as far as I'm concerned, they're assumptions and suppositions, and before we commit to any sort of costings and money, we need to see it in black and white. Also, as our amendment says, what other more cost-effective measures have we considered to help the town centres? Because if this level of investment, or let's call it debt, because that's what it is, and I get that businesses run that way, do we get our money back if it doesn't work? If the private investors don't put their money where their mouth is, because at the moment it's very much a grey area. Has already been mentioned various different things like the traffic or free parking or all these other things. I also wondered if Douglas could tell, as you mentioned earlier, about the amount, I think the percentage of retail demise in Falkirk. How does that compare with the rest of Scotland? Don't know if you know that.
I'll put mine on.
Switch on. To pick up at the point about the revenue implications of the Arts Centre, in the report it makes the point that DCA and their work identified a potential cost of 200k a year. So that was in DCA's work. Right. Obviously we need to firm that up in the course of this next stage of work to establish what that might be, and that's separate to the ongoing revenue costs and loan charges. Okay. But in terms of the point about what other measures might help the town centre, what can improve footfall, and what cost-effective measures we might enact to support that, I think an important point of the decision that the council is reaching is to resolve this uncertainty. I mentioned earlier that the lack of clarity on this point is causing other people to hold back, they're unresolved as to what their next step should be, and that's clearly causing them very real concern. We heard from Margaret in the Howgate just how difficult that is proving for them. I think we have an understanding from the work that we've done to date that both in the case of the Howgate and at Callender Square and in other circumstances in the town centre, developers want to take their next decisions to invest. Some may choose not to invest, but they want to move on, and our uncertainty is causing that difficulty. But importantly in that, as these decisions come forward, that can enable other investment to be achieved, right, whether that's in other retail, in offices, in leisure, provision in the town centre.
Douglas, you'd make a great politician. That's not what I asked.
No, I'm coming to that. My point is that in the course of us investing in and boosting footfall, these measures will boost the footfall in the town centre. So they will help the town centre overall. Our decision is integral and can kickstart that change. Now, importantly, in terms of what we can do now, we have been through a very robust process with the Town Centre Partnership. We have an action plan that's been established through consultation with retailers and other stakeholders in the town centre. There are a number of measures in there that have been enacted or are coming forward, and included in that is the proposal for the Town Centre Capital Fund, which is to be the subject of a report coming forward to the Executive. So these are measures that we have planned to take place in the short term to help improve the fortunes of the town centre, and would be complementary to the decision that we're proposing today.
So, how Falkirk's retail position compares with the rest of Scotland? No, it was actually the main point.
And I have that in regard to the Scottish Retail Consortium report, and that showed that between 2008 and 2015, we had the highest reduction in shop numbers in Scotland at 15.24%.
In Falkirk.
So we had the highest reduction of shop numbers in a town centre in that period.
Okay, right, thanks for that. Just you referred to the DCA report about the level of funding. I was also interested to see that in the DCA report they were expecting that we would get people leaving Edinburgh and Glasgow to come to a theatre in Falkirk, which I found a little bit surprising. But as I said, I'm happy to take this forward and listen, but I need more evidence and proof, because obviously it will have an impact on not just our revenue budget moving forward, but the capital budget, and it concerns me about what's going to be left to invest in the properties that aren't going to be closed as part of the strategic property review, because, as was alluded to by Madeleine, some could say that it's a choice between a nice shiny new Falkirk Town Hall at the cost of Grangemouth and Bowness Town Halls being closed. I think the other question that I would like to know is, what's the minimum measure of success that can justify this £50 million investment? Do we call it a success if private developers agree to fund it by, they're going to put £2 million into the high street, they're going to put £20 million in, or we get 2 new cafes and a shop opening? What's the measure of success here? Because I think that we have to be aware that this is taxpayers' money, and it's going to be a lot of money for a long time. When you and I are no longer here, the debt on this will still be getting paid back. How do we know when it's a success, and how much confirmation do we get from these developers before any papers are signed? Because that's a big concern of mine. But to govern, obviously, we have to choose, and choices are difficult, but they have to be rational, and they need to be based on hard evidence, and that's basically where I'm coming from, with the risks and the benefits quantified. Now, we've heard a lot today about the benefits. I haven't heard them evidenced, but as I say, we have to be aware that there are risks involved as well, because if we don't look at both sides of that coin, we might as well put taxpayers' money on the back of a horse.
A final minute, sorry, Councillor Coombs.
I accept that this is early days. Douglas spoke longer than he had to. Anyway, and that partners are looking for some sort of commitment, and that might be achieved by the initial procurement exercise. So on that basis, I'm happy to support the recommendation with our amendment that we do get some sort of report coming forward as soon as possible to see what we can do in the short term to help the demise of the town centre. However, when this exercise is finished, I do want to see hard facts set out in a clear business case if I'm going to support any further expenditure or long-term investment. Because if all we've got to go on is assertion and oversimplification of a complex decision, I'm still, as I say, unlikely to support, but looking for proof. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for your input. Before I bring in other councillors in, I think Mrs Geiser wanted to come in at that point. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Provost. It's just really to pick up on some of the points that Councillor Coombs makes. I agree And if we were asking you, if I were asking you today to commit to this project, I wouldn't be asking you to commit to this project today because you don't have all the information that you need. That's why we'll come back to you in January with much more detail around the points that Douglas has made, the headline points that Douglas has made with more detail. You absolutely need to have all the relevant information, everyone in this room, because you're the decision makers. You have to have all the relevant information before you make this decision, because it is a huge decision. It has huge implications, and there will be significant risks, as you've already identified, which will all be outlined in that report. You must know what you're getting into. I fully agree with that. All I'm asking today is that you let us take it to the next stage so that we can endeavour to persuade members of this in this chamber that this is the right thing to do and this is the right way to take things forward. So that's what we want to do. And in terms of your question about how would you measure success, it will be how you measure success. We will suggest to you criteria against which bids should be assessed, and they will clearly have to be able to demonstrate a significant degree of a significant degree of economic activity, a significant degree of revitalisation of this town centre. Otherwise, they're not going to do what we want them to do. But it's you in this room who will decide what the measures of success are when we bring them back and suggest the criteria for assessment.
Before I bring Councillor Black in, who's next, Councillor Munro, would you want to speak in relation to your amendment?
Thank you, Provost. In view of the amendment before us, we would like to withdraw our amendment, and we will support the Labour amendment.
Jim, have a good look at that side and enjoy it. Have a good look over there and enjoy that.
In his mind, is also meeting our request that officers look at moving people into the town centre if at all possible, opening up the high street and the other ideas. It would seem perverse in view of the generosity shown by the Leader of the Opposition if we didn't support him in that. Could I say at this point, Convener, one of the benefits of being here so long is that you remember what people have said in previous lives. And I'm not going to embarrass particularly members opposite for the comments that they made when the previous administration attempted to
sorry to come in, but the fact of the matter is that the situation was it was only a case of whether you were agreeing to.
I know, Provost.
So if you would take your seat, Councillor Nicholl, and you will have an opportunity to speak.
I have to leave now.
You have to leave now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did say to you earlier.
Yeah. Well, time moves quickly in here.
I know. So that was all I had to say.
Okay, right. Thank you. No, thank you very much. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but there's a due process you've got to follow. Okay, then. Thank you for that. So, if you just hold on a second, I'm just going to clarify the position now that we now have the amendment by Councillor Munro, it was seconded by Councillor Nicholl. That's been taken off. So, Councillor.
Yes. Both Councillor Munro and Councillor Nicholl have confirmed their request to withdraw the amendment which has already been moved. It's a decision for Council, so it requires Council's agreement because it has been moved and seconded. So, Provost, if perhaps you wish to just confirm if Council is in agreement.
Is Council in agreement?
Well, Provost, does that preclude anybody else getting a chance to speak?
No.
Okay, fine.
No, because we're going back on now to the further amendment. Okay, so...
Yes, if
everybody in agreement that they've withdrawn that? Has everybody agreed with that?
And that being the case, Provost, I think it would now be helpful for Councillor Bissett to formally move his amendment, and if that's seconded, that becomes the amendment against the motion as currently moved.
There'll be an opportunity with the question.
Provost, I'd just like to formally move this, and I think it's the right thing to do to collate information so we've got a good picture on exactly what's happening with costs, and so we know where we are, really. But it is important between now and that decision being taken or further information coming back that we do support the town centre, because we will always support the town centre and try and encourage and help businesses. So I'll formally move this amendment, Provost.
You got a second there?
Happy to second, Provost.
Okay, thank you. We're open up. I've got a number of people that's been... Next. Councillor Binney.
Yeah, I had a question. I hope you don't mind. It's regarding to the services, and it's about the... Yes, certainly. It's quite helpful to get an answer to this question, because we have our business community here in the audience, and I'm sure they probably feel like some of us quite frustrated, you know, decisions haven't been made, though I think obviously there will be a big decision made today or a way forward. The question is, I would like to ask the services, if you don't mind, and it's in relation to the Labour amendment. What I find a little bit strange, actually, is saying there, a look at immediate ways to support the town centre. We've known for a very long time that the town centre needs support and help. So I'm just wondering, and possibly you've got a report there, or you've got some actions behind the scenes that obviously our communities know to ask for help to support them. I don't know if that... I think I'm quite surprised that's only been asked for now, actually, you know, in an amendment, when we should really have those set of actions already there to help our communities. Can you tell me if you've got something? Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, as my colleague referred to, there is a comprehensive report that's been prepared in conjunction with our partners and stakeholders in the town centre. It's called Revitalising Falkirk. And that has a number of actions in it that we're pursuing collectively. But also there's obviously been other things mentioned in the Chamber today which can usefully be incorporated into that piece of work. As officers, we are more than happy to provide members with as much information as they need or want in relation to short, medium, long-term plans for the town centre. We'll provide any information members want. So the good thing is we already have a framework in place, but we're more than happy to add to that to provide members with information that they're looking for.
Before I bring other members in that's been waiting for some time, and maybe go back to Councillor Meikle-John at this particular stage, and just say you've seen the further amendment. Have you got an opinion on it? Do you feel as though it could be justified to incorporate that and included in the recommendation? Just to get your views on it. Thank you.
I'm a wee bit hesitant, because the last time I was prepared to make a response to the Conservative amendment, but there was an assumption that I was then winding up the debate. Right, okay, thank you. In that case, Provost, Mrs Geisler has actually indicated there is a town centre action plan already that's been worked on with the town centre retailers. It's a collective, it's not just solely the council, and there are short-term, medium and long-term plans within that, and it is all parties are represented on that particular group. So I do not have any particular issue with what's been asked for. I'm aware that there is a report due to come to the December executive in relation to the Town Centre Regeneration Fund, the 1.9 million, and the proposals to be signed off in relation to that particular spend. And I would see that as an opportunity to provide an update of the Town Centre Action Plan, and indeed any additions that we then would want to look at going forward, and I see that as an opportunity. It does say in the amendment that it's to come to the next full council, which is the 4th of December. I'm asking for a little bit of indulgence here from the Labour group, as the next executive is the 10th of December, and there's already a report in relation to Town Centre going on that, and in order to give officers time in order to pull the information together, if they would accept that it would come to the executive rather than that full council, just giving that little bit time for officers to actually update and bring the report forward.
We're not far away from each other. Councillor Bissett, in relation to what Councillor Meikle-John said, I'm coming back to you. About the time scale.
I would prefer it comes back to full council, really, so everybody can discuss it and have the information. But if it's, what was it, executive the 10th, was it? I mean, I personally didn't have a problem with that, as long as the report comes back outlining ways that we can support the town centre that accommodates the Conservatives as well, you know.
Right. Just hold on, just to get a wee bit of clarity on this. Councillor Moody. Pardon?
There's a full council end of January.
Yeah.
22nd of January, there's a full
Yeah.
council.
I'm just going to clarify the legal situation with Mr Moody, because the impasses seem to be getting bridged.
So, as I understand it, Provost, the Leader of the Council has indicated she would be prepared to be in agreement to the amendment made by Councillor Bissett, but subject to the change of the report coming back to the Executive on the 10th of December rather than the Council on the 4th of December, and that reflects the fact that there's already a report on town centre regeneration coming back to that particular meeting, and it would give an opportunity for officers to have some more time to address the points and incorporate the action plan and any other issues which arise from Councillor Bissett's amendment. Councillor Bissett, as I understand it, has said that he would be agreeable to it, albeit there's also been the point raised that there is a council in January the 29th, which is correct. So I think it's really just back to Councillor Bissett just to confirm whether or not he's agreeable to the report coming to the Executive on the 10th of December.
And then that would go back to the January full council?
No, if there's a report coming back, it would come back to the Executive on the 10th of December. We've seen that the Executive is capable of referring items on to the Council if it wishes to, but I think in the first instance, if that's what was agreed, it would come back to the Executive.
Councillor Bissett, you want to come in? We're not trying to hold things up.
But, Provost, I would prefer it would come back to the full council in January, if that would be agreeable.
Would that decision then having to be taken at the Executive in December then?
In which case, can I ask for clarification that that would just be the report around the Town Centre Action Plan, because I'm concerned if we're going to have a delay in relation to the whole report, that it would only just be that one item that would be taken to January.
We'll get clarification.
I think it would be, if there was already a pre-planned report to the regeneration, on town centre regeneration, with sign-off for the regeneration funds for the 10th of December, that would retain the situation, but the particular matters addressed in the amendment moved by Councillor Bissett, if it was to be addressed at the January full council meeting, then anything still left from that would come to that meeting.
Does everybody understand that?
I'd like to follow up, Provost, yes.
Okay.
Just for clarity, the work that's to be done around the procurement would still come back in December. Sorry, January. January, yes. Yes.
Right. I'll bring Councillor Black in. She's been listening to this her rights of her own for some time. Councillor Black.
Right,
then it'll be Councillor Goldie.
Thank you, Provost. I mean, I'm standing here today and knowing that what I'll say will be unpopular with people that I respect very much. As you all know, there are no easy answers where town centres are concerned, and I do believe that they should be the heart of the community. Margaret Foy expressed that very well, and it's sad that they're not valued in the way that they used to be. And as we're all aware, the current HQ and Arts Centre project proposals has huge financial costs to the Council and implications for Council budgets for many years to come. And let's not forget that the costs for the project are based on this site, not further up the High Street, which would incur further costs on top of the 45 to 50 million currently suggested. The harsh reality is that the buildings will be built and renovated with capital money from borrowing, but paying for that money will come off already very stretched revenue budgets that fund all our vital council services. I was on the board of Falkirk Towns myself for several years, and I was a retailer. I owned a card and gift shop, so I do know some of the issues involved. I organised meetings with retailers in Grangemouth 2 years ago to see what could be done to make Grangemouth town centre better, and the reality really was very little without major investment. All our centres, Falkirk and the districts, are struggling, and Grangemouth in particular is crying out for assistance and support. 3 years ago, I was the only councillor in this council, and at that time, as an administration, we were trying very hard to do something about Falkirk Town Centre. The proposal then was for a cost-neutral build over at West Bank, which just
It's only a couple of minutes for the bottom of the high street with a cafe, etc. And I was the only councillor at that time who did not vote against that proposal. That proposal, along with the town hall, which is going to cost £4 million, was the deal of the century. And I really still think we were stupid to turn that down. 3 years on, we're in a very different situation altogether. Council budgets continue to be stretched, and if we go ahead with this proposal as it stands, as it looks like just now, we could be paying back over £2 million for up to 40 years. Whilst at the same time in the 5-year business plan, we're asking our Health and Social Care Partnership to take a cut of £10.8 million from services that look after our most vulnerable. This is reality and the heart of the matter, and this is why there's so much debate. It's an emotive topic. It's a very important topic for every citizen in this area, and that's why every councillor in this chamber feels strongly about it, and that is why it's taking so long to come to a resolution. How do we spend our money and who do we help the most? Those are the questions that need answered. And I'm not convinced that an arts centre in the town centre would increase footfall for shopping. I do think we need something that will motivate people to come to the town centre, but I'm just not sure that having those extra seats would increase things in the way we would like, because at the end of the day, we're bang in the middle of Glasgow and Edinburgh. But I would like more details about those other towns and the cultural benefits that they experienced, because I think we really need to know all the facts and we don't have them. So I'm looking forward to the next report, because I hope that will help me to make my final decision. We do need something in the town centre that will attract families and people to come from all around the district. And I've been asking for more support for our town centres for the 12 years I've been a councillor, in terms of more grants for new businesses, in terms of grants for retailers that are struggling to help them improve the variety of stock that they have. All these things I've suggested over the years. And I think probably, and maybe it's my imagination or wishful thinking, but I think that our administration at one point brought in free car parking before Christmas. These are things that could be looked at again, because they might have a cost to us, but the benefits might be huge to the community and to the businesses in the town. So I'm sure that the officers have got a better idea than me that hooks that could bring more people into the town. And it's increased footfall that we need to bring more businesses to the town as well. So I'm glad to have had the chance to listen to elected members and the business community. And agreeing the recommendations, we're not saying yes, but we're saying let's explore this further, because we really need to see what the full cost implications will be. Thank you, Provost.
Councillor Black, Councillor Goldie, then Councillor McLuckie.
Yeah, Provost, two things. Mr Duff did refer to Carmlan being in the town centre. Can I just put everybody's mind at ease? I'm not going to ask for the new municipal buildings and arts centre to go to Carmlan. No, at this stage of the game. The other thing, Provost, I would need to say is, if you don't mind me saying, in your esteemed post, under the rules of chairmanship by Lord Citrine, when the mover of the motion speaks the second time, the debate's closed, and we would save an awful lot of time in here. But time's important, and it's a very big issue. So if you don't mind me saying that, I know you've got a very qualified legal person beside you to keep you right. But the one thing that business isn't getting today, and it's the one thing that business is crying out for, is assurances and a way going forward and finality on what we're actually going to be doing. And we're still not doing it yet. And Councillor Binney said, why are we coming forward with an amendment now? Why has it not been mentioned before? Well, I'd refer to Councillor Binney. Her party's been in charge for the last 2 or 3 years. The other thing I'd like to point out was I was very impressed when the leader of the council said, we did it in Denny. Every individual in the SNP voted against the Denny project, and there's been nothing done in Denny that I can see about the Denny town centre. I think they're going to build houses on it. I'll maybe get clarification for that in a very short space of time. But Labour delivered that in the first phase. Make no mistake about that. The other thing that business must be sick of, and it's the political football down here. The last time this project came forward, this side of the House did everything they could do to frustrate it. Everything they could do. However, we're back where we are now in the situation that we find ourselves in. And there's some questions I would like to ask the officers, Chair. Provost, sorry. Can Mr Duff define for me that town centre first proposal, what that actually is?
Obviously, Town Centre First principle is a principle established by government. The Scottish Government have developed that in partnership with organisations such as Scotland's Towns Partnership, retailer organisations and other stakeholders. And the point is to encourage that any form of investment should in the first instance consider the town centre as its location. So, and it is to encourage the improvement of town centres at the heart of their communities.
Fine. Thanks for that. Could I just remind Mr Duff that when I was in charge of economic development, and we spoke about the last time, we're talking about the new building and what was going to be happening in the new arts and civic building, that Mr Duff, along with other officers, wanted to take it down to the technical college, down near the gateway. So obviously, I'm not going to ask him because he's clever enough. I didn't want to embarrass anybody. He did say in an earlier part of this debate that the theatre, the arts centre and theatre would bring a lot of people into the town centre. Therefore, the reverse is true. If Mr Duff had got his way and officers had got their way, he would have took all the people for the arts centre down to the Gateway project. The other thing I would like to say to Mr Duff about Town Centre First, bearing in mind that the Gateway project is right next to the retail park. So you've not got too far to go. You didn't even have too much imagination to say, well, we'll just go from there to the retail park, because you're going to pass virtually the entrance to the retail park if you go along Thornhill Road to get to the town centre. So it's equally important to stress as well, Mr Duff, again, I didn't want to embarrass him, he's cleverer than I am, but we're talking about retail now, and the principle that retail should be in the town centre. Mr Duff's got a proposal to take retail to the Gateway. He'll tell me if I'm wrong. There's a proposal aboard to take retail down to the Gateway, again taking stuff out of the town centre. So this is the type of thing that doesn't cause just shopkeepers concern and confusion. It causes me confusion. Because the same officers, every year when we come along and we say, let's do away with the car park in the town centre, mind you, Falkirk Town Centre is the only place in Falkirk District that you've got to pay to park. And we say, look, let's give the town centre a break. Let's do away with the charges. The same officers sitting there say, oh. Certainly, it's a council decision.
Councillor Goldie, just for a minute. You're coming out with information that we're no privy to. Plus, no, wait a minute. Plus the fact is that you've always got to be careful. You should know better than me. You've been here longer than me. You've always got to be careful how you're taking officers. And I know that you respect officers as much as I do, but I'm just saying to you just now, is that if we continue for the area that we're in just now, I know you're coming up with a lot of information, but the fact is that you know as well as I do that we've got to be careful how we portray officers. Thank you, sir.
I hope no one would think I was trying to be offensive to officers. In fact, I wish officers everything they wish me. So what I would say, Provost, is if we're being perfectly candid and perfectly truthful, the amendment itself, we're talking about retailers, we've got retailers sitting here. The busiest time of the year is coming up, Christmas. Will these measures that we've put forward today be implemented for Christmas? Will they be implemented for the January sale? Not a bit. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that those involved get involved and do that, because that is a major issue. But they've no good certainty. We're going to come back in here.
Final minute, sir. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Final minute.
Time.
Yes, thank you.
Provost, thank you for your unanimity and your patience. Thanks very much.
Okay, no, thank you very much. Okay then.
Now, and seeing the leader got half an hour, I should only get half of that, convener, right? Right, the first thing is, obviously, there used to be an issue in the council when we made plans that cost money, we would get to ken where it came from. Considering this capital project goes for 50 million up to 80 million, and there's a 2 or 3 year budget cost to that, is the working group for the constituents out there to pay their council tax and rent, are they going to know what cuts each year for for the £2 or £3 million that's going to have to go to pay this is going to come from. So that's my first question for anybody that can answer it, because obviously we've got to add the coast zone. If we go forward with the project, that money will have to come from somewhere. So it'll come from budgets, and it means cuts. So I would like to ken what is getting cut, because my constituents I want to ken. The other point I would like answered is, it was mentioned earlier on about the calendar square, and it was said that Abbotsford House was different because we were tenants. We're also a tenant in Calendar Square. And another councillor said earlier on, we've Kent at the town centre has been struggling for a while. Well, why was it passed to take staff out of Calendar Square? A lot of housing staff's been took out of that place. When the reality is we've been putting it in the premise. And that premise is already furnished for an office in Calendar Square. When we talked about paying £1 million for Calendar Square, when it came on the market, you were getting 450 car parking spaces. Because even if we went and took the opportunity now to refurbish Marks and Spencer's or other units, where are they going to park? I go up here at 3 o'clock for a haircut. I've seen my Noblin getting parked at the Glasgow buildings. There's no space. I don't know where the folk is, because there's nobody in the street in the town centre. But as I say, the car park's full. So if we were putting more offices up that end, where's the car parking spaces gone? Because that's number one. And if the first thing we should have been doing was getting Calendar Square for £1 million and getting the car parking spaces and refurbishing the units, because it was said we didn't care what it would cost to refurbish them. But I'll tell you one thing, it wouldn't have cost 80 million, right, to go there and refurbish Calendar Square. And that would have been more offices, and we would be happy there. Councillors, for us to have a meeting, we can have a meeting in a community centre or something. It's not a project for us. This is for staff to be central and help the town centre, because this is what the debate's supposed to be about. But it just seems strange all the folk that called them vanity projects before have suddenly changed their tune. What happened? What is the difference from before to now?
One or two of the questions answered. Before that, I think Mrs Geyser, did you want to come in and say something?
Yes, just for a bit of clarification, in relation to the Gateway development, you will recall that there was a retail impact assessment undertaken in respect of that project, and that was yet to be reported back to members. So we will be coming back to members advising them of the output of that process. So it's just to let you know that that's still outstanding.
Just on the one about the financial position at the moment, there is 45 million in the capital programme. I know. There's 45 million in the capital programme, and the revenue consequences of that have been fed through the budget gaps that have been presented to members. So clearly, if that figure either increased or decreased, then that would impact on the revenue gap, and therefore the options that were available to members and the decisions that members would have to take.
Provost, what I asked was that whatever the impact is, an extra 2 million a year and cuts that's added on to meet that gap, could the people of Falkirk district get to ken what it is that's been cut to provide for the new headquarters? That's all I'm asking.
Thank you, Provost. Just very briefly, I mean, in terms of what the revenue gap is, officers will put forward options to bridge that gap, and members will take decisions on that in due course.
Councillor Reid, Councillor Alexander,
Yes, thank you, Provost. I wouldn't say very much. It's been a long day, and I think an unnecessarily long day. I think the debate is premature. It should have come at a later stage in the procurement process, but that's politics, I suppose. Just one point of clarification, however, we've agreed that options 4 and 5 go forward as a measure for the new procurement. I thought I heard the Leader of the Opposition say that she hoped that this site would not be included in these options, or did I misunderstand?
I did say that there was obviously muddying of the waters, and I would like to see that this site be precluded from the procurement exercise, but that is something that obviously will come forward as we get the further information to the next meeting.
The reason I ask this is the most important point. We don't know what the market is going to come up with. It come up with all sorts of options. I think the Chief Executive made that point. We cannot predict what the market will produce. Someone might offer to build a theatre here, but a HQ up there, or vice versa. And I would not want to see that precluded, because even one thing going up the high street is better than nothing. I do think we have the opportunity also to, and it probably will arise at the next meeting, is to frame a procurement package as wide and as broad as possible, so that any offer out there comes forward. I think that is absolutely essential, and I would ask officers that we are assured of that fact. Have we? Right, okay. So we're not sticking to options 4 and 5, we're making it broader and wider. Right, so...
We are suggesting that you take forward options 4 and 5, because we need to give certainty to the market. We need to say that we're going to ask for something in particular. But that's about a number of seats in the Arts Centre, a number of desks. But how that is delivered, whether it's together, apart, we think being together there will be economies of scale. We will be able to share spaces and thus reduce the costs. But you're absolutely right, we don't know what the market's going to come forward with. They could come forward with other partners, they could come forward with other commercial partners that would share office space with the council offices. They could come forward with other uses like student accommodation or hotels. We really don't know, as you made it, that what the market will bring forward. But we have to give them certainty, and this is procurement rules, we have to give them certainty around what it is that we want to see delivered in all of this. And so we have to say, and in fact what we will be coming back to you in January is narrowing that down to one option. And we will be asking the market to deliver for us 500 seats and 550 seats?
550 seats.
550 seats, sorry, and either three, whatever the desk, because there's 2 options for desks. But we will have to have that clarity. But how that is delivered, how it's matched up with other options and where each element of that is located is entirely a matter for the market. So that's the answer.
Provost, could I just say...
Well, could I just make a...
It's just, I was speaking to a developer who is interested in the council decision, and he's said 2 very straightforward questions. What do you want to build, and where do you want to build it? And the problem we have is, at this point, we don't know what we want to build. We've done an exercise that is helping to frame this, and that's the point of today's report, which we will bring to you in the next stage to firm that up completely, so we are clear on that point. The point about where we want to build it is the procurement exercise, and you're right, Councillor Reid, that we would want to be as wide as possible within the frame of the town centre to see what the options are and bring that back for you.
Just with your indulgence, Provost, I may put forward the hypothesis. Suppose someone wanted to a joint venture out there, perhaps houses plus a theatre, that would not be precluded then? Yeah, right. Okay, that's just the point I'm making. If you preclude this site from any consideration, then I think it would be to our detriment as a commercial organisation.
Provost, the general public and the traders know that there are political differences between us. They expect there to be political differences between us. That's what gives us something to debate. That's what gives us something to compare with each other in terms of policies and initiatives. They also expect us to come together when it is in the best interest of the community that we represent, we all represent. So that's why I'm not going to respond to any of the political jibes that have been made. I'm going to stick rigidly to the agenda before us. But can I say, in defence of Mr Duff, Douglas, he can only bring to Falkirk Council options that are brought to his attention. The issue of where the new college fitted into the equation was not Douglas Duff's policy initiative. He doesn't take policy initiatives. It was his passing on to members an offer that was made to the authority. And so I think it's really, members should be aware of that, and they should be aware of the sensitivities in terms of dealing with the officers in this matter and every other matter. The issue of what's before us today, I would hope, and maybe we can get some clarification, I would hope that Douglas's section can deliver this, because the last thing we want, the last thing we need is diversification into the different areas. While we have a very, very efficient economic development staff, we don't have that many of them that we can afford too many distractions down blind alleys, and that has to be recognised, and I would hope that Douglas can give us that assurance. The issue of funding is obviously an issue, and has been well covered by Chief Executive, the Director, and by Douglas Duff, that we don't know at this point in time, until we get out to the market, just exactly what the impact will be. Nor do we know what the issues are in terms of the wider funding aspect. And the Gateway, for example, town centre regeneration programmes, other areas where we have the ability to attract external finance. And external finance will be important as part of the overall procurement. But what will be even more important is the message that is sent out to developers, to traders, and to the wider community, that Falkirk Council is supportive of our town centre initiatives. Just as we were supportive of Stennismuir regeneration, supportive of the Denny regeneration and process, although there was a difference with regards to the quality at the end of the day. Equally supportive of the proposals for the regeneration of other parts. For example, the library in Bowness and the issues that face Grangemouth. And some work is already ongoing with regards to the Grangemouth situation.
Final minute, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Provost. I'd just like to finish up by saying that this is about ambition. And I think it's the ambition to have a centre of the town that's vibrant, that has a day economy and a nighttime economy that is robust enough to take the knocks that all city centres, town centres take from time to time. Things have changed with regards to the manner in which the town centres are regarded. We can see the comparisons that have been taken elsewhere between the traditional retail as opposed to the multi-use, and we see that those towns and cities are the ones who are being successful. We need to diversify the centre of Falkirk Town Centre. We don't own any properties, as far as I'm aware, in the town centre, High Street itself, so I'm not sure what we're going to be looking at for that particular aspect of it. But we do have an influence. And if that influence is going to extend to real, genuine bricks and mortar improvements, then we have to be bold. And I hope that not just being bold today, but being bold throughout the next 12 months in particular as we develop this project.
Okay, thank you for your input, sir. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Provost. Provost, it's probably May 2017 when I was elected. The first meeting we had of the strategy review was new headquarters in Civic Centre, Arts Centre. And I stated at the meeting that it's not going to work if everybody doesn't pull together. The option of doing this place up, in my opinion, is a no-goer. We're wasting our time even if we think about it. It's past its sell-by date, and anything that improves the town centre, I'm up for it. And I wouldn't take as many other our members have says every option needs to be open and fully investigated. There's 3 of these options where we're talking about refurbishing a couple of our buildings. We've only bought Abbotsford House 2 years ago, and option 1 we're talking about investing 3.14 million in it. I would say that we look at bringing as many of our departments into the one building. If that means getting everybody into the town centre for a bigger footfall, I think that's an option that we should be looking at. The thing about the town centre, one of my colleagues, I can't remember who it was, mentioned about when you get to the roundabout at the KFC and come up, stops. How do we get people into the town centre? And that's something that we really, really need to look at. We're bringing millions of people into the Falkirk area every year. We are great areas we can, like the Kelpies and Calendar House, the Falkirk Wheel. But how do we keep them? And it's about keeping them and getting them here to spend, which will help our economy. Provost, I agree with Councillor Reid. I think we've debated where we didn't need to debate. We just go forward with what we've all agreed on, which we're doing, and get that's when the decisions will be made. So we've spoke here for 3 and a bit hours. We didn't need to speak for that long.
Okay, thank you. Before we bring in Councillor Michael John to wind up, I'm just going to ensure that everybody knows exactly what we have agreed. I'll bring in Mr Moody just to clarify exactly where we're sitting at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. We have the recommendations which have been moved by the Leader of the Council with one minor adjustment, which is in recommendation 3, instead of the Executive in December, it's the Executive in January. And against that, there was a Labour amendment, which in turn has been adjusted so that instead of saying next council meeting, it says the full council meeting in January. And as I understand it, the Leader of the Council had indicated that she was minded to accept the Labour amendment, which would incorporate it into the administration motion.
Yes.
Okay, everybody understand that one? Perfect. Wind up, please, Leader. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Provost, I'm not going to take terribly long because it has been a long afternoon, but it has been a good debate. People have kept the debate very good-natured, and for that I'm very thankful. It is an important issue, but as has been indicated by a couple of other speakers, we've had this debate when we didn't have to have the debate, and I truly hope that we will be able to move forward now and allow this project and what comes out of the process, the distillation, the procurement process to move forward. Because while we have to do our due diligence and we have to build a financial model to be able to deliver our town centre HQ Arts Centre project, time is of the essence, and we have heard that very clearly from the retailers. They want some actions now, and while we can give some actions and some progress, probably it's going to be relatively low level, that the bigger impact is going to come with the bigger project, and it will be about being able to maintain where we are right now, give confidence to the market that we are serious about our town centre and regenerating our town centre, and engaging as we go into the procurement processes with other private developers about what else they can provide by way of housing, student accommodation, hotel accommodation, hospitality trade, and all of that comes with it. People are getting really hung up in the detail right now until we actually see what the market can give, and they come in and give us proposals that perhaps do open up the town centre to vehicles and transport, then we're not in a position to be given those commitments. We need to make sure that we go through a process that gives us all the information and we progress, because if we don't, then there's going to be more job losses in our town centre, more shops, more retailers, more businesses that are going to have even more difficulty in going forward. And I don't want to have more people out of work in the Falkirk district. I want to be able to grow Falkirk district and to be able to create those jobs, to create that economic vibrancy in our town centre that is going to help sustain people's income and, of course, make us as a council area somewhere that people want to come, want to be, want to come and see our arts centre. We do need to be ambitious and taking what we have as our arts centre just now and just doing like for like, as I feel that people are tending to do. We need to be far more ambitious than that. We need to look at what else we can provide and actually create that sense of momentum going forward. I'm pleased that we're able to go forward as a united council, and I look forward to working with constructively with our colleagues through the Town Centre Partnership to help develop this further.
Thank you, and thank all members, and thanks members of the public who came here and they've sort of listened and took part. Thank you for your representation, and have a safe journey home, everybody. Thank you.